A strong woman makes mistakes and avoids the same in the future, but a woman of strength realizes that life's mistakes can also be God's blessings and capitalizes on them. A strong woman walks sure-footedly, but a woman of strength knows God will catch her when she falls, and he did catch me many times. A strong woman wears a look of confidence on her face, but a woman of strength wears grace. A strong woman has faith that she is strong enough for the journey, but a woman of strength has faith that it is in the journey that she will become strong. I wanted to thank us. There's many that served us in many ways. Thank you for the financial support, the generosity, for the prayers. I can't imagine the strength that you could just feel. And my husband and my sons would say in jail that they knew people were praying because there was just strength. They just had strength, and they knew that people were praying. There are still 2 men incarcerated that were found guilty. One man is sentenced to 50-some years. It's a life sentence for him. Another man has not been sentenced yet. And there are several that pled out under fear and threats. Pray for them. They need your prayers. Another cowboy quote is, "We may get knocked down on the outside, but the key to living in victory is to learn how to get up on the inside." And my desire as a rancher's wife is to endure with dignity and strength. To have those who know me say, "She was unstoppable." Not because she did not have failure or doubts, but because she continued in spite of them. Do not let anyone break your soul. You have to stand on your own 2 feet, and you have to fight, and you have to know that it's right when you do it, and you have to have that conviction that comes with that. And you have to have some dirt under your fingernails and some liberty in your soul. Above all, please pray for our sacred Constitution. I love this land of liberty. We must preserve it for our posterity. We must stand together for freedom. It's a battle that must be won. Liberty is in your blood as well. We all have a story to tell. So let's do whatever it takes. This is spirit, my friends. This is conviction, and this is strength. It is your time to come forward now and to defend and to make right and to teach your neighbor. This is your time to decide which side you're on. There will be no fence setters. There's no fence setters. Are you on the side of freedom and liberty? Are you on the side of the divinely inspired Constitution? Have you read the Constitution? Have you shared the Constitution? Do you know the Constitution and how important it is? Do what is right. Let the consequence follow. Angels above us are silent notes-taking. There's much work to do. So once again, using my cowboy lingo, let's saddle up and ride, cowboy. Let's get her done. Let's get her done with spirit, with strength, and with conviction, and let's do whatever it takes. Thank you. And that's all I am. So thank you very much.
Oh, this mic. Isn't she wonderful? I need to use the computer, and everything's put away here. Up on the screen.
Isn't there a button you push? I don't remember.
So it should go up on the screen for the...
Yeah.
We don't see it yet.
Okay, start. I'll keep that here.
Technology. I had a little lesson on how to do this prior, but it's not, I didn't get the button for that. I don't know where that button's at. Well, I will go ahead and start by thanking everyone for coming tonight and for supporting our family. I want to thank the Loving Liberty who has hosted this event. I would like to thank Joe and Brian and Garrett, and a special thanks to CaroL for coming tonight and supporting me. She is someone to emulate, and I really admire her strength and her courage, and I'm grateful for our friendship. This isn't part of my speech, but I might as well just keep going until the projector works. But I can remember when I first met CaroL. My husband had decided that he was going to leave Salt Lake City. He was attending a conference for work, and he decided he wanted to know a little bit more about what Cliven Bundy was all about and what he was doing and why he was standing. You didn't teach me this part of how to turn that part on. There we go. One button. Amazing. Woo! What would we do without the young people? I know I would be in really big trouble. But Lavoy traveled all the way down from Salt Lake. We lived down in Cane Beds, which is about 5 hours from here. And he had come up to Salt Lake to attend a conference for our work. And he had been wrestling with the headlines, and he didn't know what Cliven was all about. And he really wanted to understand what it was he was doing and why he was doing it. And so he took off from the conference and drove all the way down to Bunkerville. And there he knocked on the door and was welcomed inside, and he asked Cliven all kinds of questions. And I'm sure Cliven doesn't remember Lavoy. There were hundreds of people there. But Lavoy decided, after being invited to ride, that that's what he was going to do. And so he came home, and he was home about 10 or 11 at night. And he said, "Jeanette, I'm going to ride tomorrow morning with the cowboys for Cliven Bundy." And I said, "Okay." And I can remember, because I hadn't been following any of this in the news. We didn't have cable, and so I hadn't followed the story at all. I was just busy being mom. And he got up about 5:30 in the morning and took off for Bunkerville. And I remember him telling me that he was the first cowboy that arrived of the ones that rode that day. He quietly saddled up his horse and waited for all the others to arrive. And I remember him telling me about when they stopped midway, how they knelt and prayed, and how he could feel the Spirit of the Lord with the whole group of men that were there. And there's this wonderful picture, I don't know who took it, of Lavoy riding that day in Bunkerville. But you can see him sitting so erect in on top of his horse. He's just straight riding. And the biggest smile on his face. He was so happy to be there. I don't know who took that picture or captured that moment of the joy. You can see the joy on his face. But he said he left after the cows were let loose, and he just rode back to his trailer, loaded up, and came home. And I was so grateful to have him come through that door, because our experience at home was a whole lot different than the peace that he described. we were sitting at home in fear for his life, because all we got was, I think it was Pete Santilli or one of those internet news people. I'm trying to remember their name. And that was all that was available to us. We're hovered, all of us kids, and the kids were hovered around the computer, and we were standing there waiting for the next little glimpse of whatever, or little tidbit, and we're being faced with all of these armed men tacked out, all these hundreds of police cars driving by, watching all of these roadblocks. I had a girlfriend, Colleen Stubbs. She might not have wanted me to tell her name, but Colleen was there, and she was calling me every little while, and I was calling her, just back and forth, wanting to know what was happening from moment to moment. And all of a sudden, she says, "Oh my gosh, Jeanette, we've come to the wash, and I've taken a wrong turn, and I'm in the FBI camp. And I can't get out. They won't let me out." And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, Colleen, how far are you from everybody? Can you see anything?" I was so worried for Lavoy. And all of a sudden, then the cell phones were wiped out, and nobody could talk or send information in or out. And there was a no-fly zone. And all we got was InfoWars. I finally remembered. This is the over 50 brain memory, lack of. But anyways, InfoWars, that's who we were listening to. And that's all we got. That's the only information that we got until Lavoy got home. And I was so grateful to see him walk through that door. But he was so thrilled to have been there. He was so grateful that he got to meet Cliven and talk to a couple of his sons and get to understand what it was he was doing and why he was doing it, because that's not what we heard in the press. That's not what was demonstrated in the press. And that whole moment changed my husband's life. I'll go ahead and start this. That was my husband, Lavoy Finicum. He was murdered by politically driven, out-of-control government agents during an illegal roadblock known as a kill stop the day before his 55th birthday, January 26, 2016. He had gone to Oregon to stand peacefully for property rights, for our ever-disappearing liberties, for who he considered to be his neighbor, Dwight and Susie Hammond, and for you and for me. Upon impact, he left his truck alone, with his hands in the air. He was surrounded by 30-plus highly trained, armed officers. There were snipers in the trees. They had planned this for days. They had prepared the trees to hold their sniper rifles. They had been out there organizing this kill stop. Without mercy, they shot him 3 times in the back while his hands were still in the air. A planned roadblock with no warrant, no broken laws. He was murdered, assassinated, with no due process and no trial by a jury. That is the part we struggle with at times, sometimes now, watching the not guilty verdicts come in. He was not afforded that privilege to have his case heard before a jury of his peers. We have hired Morgan Philpott and Rick Kerber to represent our family in the wrongful death lawsuit for the murder of my husband. We have filed the complaint, and we are going to move forward with all of this. It is a long process. It's a long process. I am having to learn new things. Well, not new, just more of the same. Patience. Patience. We have teamed up also with an organization called Center for Self-Governance, and they have been working very closely with our family in putting together a documentary on Lavoy's life, the incident from Malheur and what happened and transpired there. They've interviewed quite a few people. Let's see if I can operate this again. So I can show you a little bit about what we are working on.
Hello everyone, this is Jeanette Finicum. It's in September of 2014. I'm out here on my ranch. It's great out here.
You know, I've never been one to try to cause problems. If you get in trouble in school, I always raise my hand. I always stood in line. To this day, I do not have a speeding ticket yet.
But it doesn't take too much to see that large voting files are gathered.
Here is a nominal trespass vehicle. $2 change. $180. $1,000. It's not there. How do you buy it from them?
This tank here goes out of cars. The land came in here. Hit up the tank. They drained it. It's stolen.
You classified as domestic terrorists. These are real lives. These are real people. They're going to pull everybody's raising rights. Everybody will lose their jobs here.
Look what they're doing over to that family, Ammon family. They threw them in jail. Tremendous amount of fines.
This isn't America. This isn't what we are.
No matter how long or
and buttons don't do well. Lavoy had a very strong character. He was brave. He was amazing. I look back and I see these little bits of film put together, and I am in awe of his strength and his courage and his conviction. And I hope that I can continue just a little bit in the way that he has. Our family wants to see justice and accountability for those involved in Lavoy's murder. We need to hold those responsible who have lied, overstepped, misused, and illegally abused their positions of authority as they have continued to uncover all of these politically motivated illegal activities. We need to hold all of them accountable. Those who are in these positions of power, we, the people, need to insist and demand that our elected and hired officials are held accountable for their illegal activities and for not upholding the Constitution of the United States. They need to be removed from office or their jobs, not just be transferred back and forth between government agencies, as we have seen in the cases of Dr. Red and the Bundys. That's so much we're learning about what has happened. The Wooten report is very enlightening. We need to demand to see the rest of that Wooten report. We need to know what these people are doing, but they operate behind a cloak, behind a screen of deception. The media is in cahoots. There is so much that we need to know and understand about what has been happening. But when I had been talking with Dr. Red's son, Jade, and Jay was informing me of all these different things that had been going on, and I was quite surprised at some of the information that I was reading, and about how the head of BLM was just transferred over to the head of the Forest Department. And when things got a little rough again, they decided to make another switch and switch the guy they had just switched over to the Forest Department back over to the BLM department. We, the people, have short memories, and we don't remember what's happening, so we forget, and they're able to go back and forth like this, and we're no the wiser. And we need to become more actively involved in holding these people accountable. You know, if they were in the private sector, they would lose their jobs, right? They would lose their jobs. They would not be transferred to another division within the government, only to be transferred back.
They'd be in jail.
They would be in jail for some of their illegal activities. Now, I don't know what I've done to this PowerPoint. Oh, my son-in-law, Tom, he's saving me. Thank you. Okay, he's saving me again. Okay. Could we have a little bit of light? I can't see my notes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I was asked to speak about some of the things that I have been through in the last 2.5 years since my husband's murder. And so I'm just going to briefly touch on a few of the things, because there's not enough time to really talk about everything. And I really don't want to kind of rehash all of it too much. I've traveled the country for the last 2 years talking about my husband because I wanted you to know the real man, Jeanette Finicum. And who was the real man, Jeanette Finicum? He was a loving son, father, husband. We're parents of 12 children. I have 25 grandchildren and one more next week. So it'll be up to 26. Not as much as CaroL. I don't think I'll ever reach CaroL's. But he was an active father in the home. He was home every day. We worked with therapeutic foster care children for 18 years. And so he was there every day. And I am so grateful that I can say that I got to spend all of that time with him. Because I don't know how I would feel now if I had not had that extra time. That's the type of man he was. He wanted to share his life with me and with his kids, and he was a hard worker. He dreamed of having and owning his own ranch from the time he was about 8 years old, because going through some of his journals, I've discovered where the LV bar came to be, and that he was about 8 years old, and he was doodling and decided to create his own brand for his ranch one day, and they're his initials, and then every good brand has a bar in it, right? So it's LV bar. So he dreamed about having a ranch and being a good father and being a good man, serving a mission. I remember one year for Christmas, we were kind of going through some of his things. I don't remember why, but there was this little blue piece of paper that he wrote prior to going on his mission, and it was all of his goals in life. And he had reached all of them, but for some reason he felt like he hadn't measured up quite to what he wanted to be. But I was so impressed that a mind of an 18-year-old boy would want his main goals in life were to serve a mission, to be married in the temple, to a good wife, it said. So I hope I qualify. And to be a good father and to have his own ranch someday. And I believe it said to be as good a father as his own is how it read. And that's where he felt like he hadn't quite measured up, because he just loved his dad so much, and he had learned so much about what it meant to be a strong man from his dad. And he had been divorced, so he thought he had just fallen just a little bit short of being a good dad. But he hadn't. We had 12 wonderful children and over 60 wonderful foster young men in our home over those years. He was the epitome of someone you would want your young man to become. He was just an amazing man. And I remember after he said that to me, I said, I'm going to give this back to him. And I put it in a picture frame, and I wrapped it up, and I put it under the tree that year for Christmas. And that was my gift to him, because he certainly had reached every single one of those goals that he had set for himself, even though he didn't think so himself. I wanted to be the one to tell the story about who my husband was. I didn't want the media to be in control of that narrative. The media is not in the business of telling the truth. Their job, their motive, and their mission is to create illusion in order to blur our reality. I believe that with everything, every being in my soul. I believe that. I would have never maybe said that 3 years ago, because I was a stay-at-home mom. I was not out in public. I'm not a public speaker. I didn't know much about politics, and I really don't know a whole heck of a lot now. I just know that it's crooked. That's how I see it now. The media is crooked. They don't tell the truth. They twist it, manipulate the minds of us, the American people, and we need to start digging a little bit deeper to find the truth, because their agenda is to not give us that truth. Some of the other challenges that I've had has been dealing with the FBI. I didn't expect to be followed by the BLM Law Enforcement Division or the FBI, but I certainly have been followed to events in Delta, Colorado. And just the other day, after my dog was shot and killed, I received a visit, and I was informed by that law enforcement officer that they had been contacted by the BLM Law Enforcement Division to keep an eye on me and my comings and goings and whoever else might be coming and going from my home. Me, mother of 12, grandma of 25. I'm going, how scary am I? I could not believe that they would go to this kind of energy and resources, our resources, to watch our family and to watch what we were doing. I have been label lynched as a sovereign citizen, profiled as a domestic right-wing extremist, and judged by the American public for standing with my husband as a dual federalist. I have been labeled anti-government and put on their watch lists. I am not anti-government. I am, as was my husband, for pro-responsible government. And we believe in the Constitution to be the law of the land, and it is our responsibility as its citizens to stand up and uphold and protect it.
Hear, hear.
I was forced off my own ranch and insulated from my ranching duties for almost 2 years because the BLM refused to follow their own federal regulations or acknowledge that I was my husband's wife and widow. They denied that I had any right to that permit and pretended that it was simply terminated upon his death. That whole thing was unbelievable to me. I couldn't believe that they wouldn't even follow Arizona law, where it's community property, whether there's a will or no will. They wouldn't recognize me as the legal heir to his property. But a change in administration and a change in the head of the BLM, and all of a sudden things started to change. I would like to think that some of my speaking engagements, like with Paul, some of my representatives in Arizona, with Sylvia Allen, I would hope to think that some of that had something to do with it too, that finally somebody was listening and somebody was willing to start standing up and pushing for the right thing to be done. Because when we finally received a phone call from them after complete radio silence for nearly 18 months, they wanted to have it settled ASAP. We couldn't understand the turnaround because for 18 months we had been sitting there, they were stonewalling us, refusing to even communicate with us on any level. So I was finally able to return to my ranch November 13th, 2017, almost 2 years later. It has been wonderful to be back out there and to have my cows out on the range that they know. I remember the day that we rounded them all up and unloaded them at Bobcat and had a mile to push them into Tuckup. And they practically ran all the way through those 2 gates. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh my gosh, this isn't going to be hard work at all. I was a little concerned it was just me and my daughter and all these cows. And no, they knew that they were home, and they just ran to get there. And maybe I had a few ministering angels there helping to push them on. I have fought to have my foster license reinstated. That took quite a doing. We lost our job the first week that my husband went up there. I have fought to have my husband's cattle brand preserved for our family. I have fought for the rights to my husband's book. We received threatening mail, hate mail. Our family dealt with workplace retaliation. We have dealt with family and church members' judgments, ridicule, and isolation. There is a list of negative things that we have been through, but I won't go on. I choose to remember you, lovely people, who have loved me and who have continued to support our family throughout this horrific chain of events, who continue to remind me how wonderful we humans can be to and for each other. In traveling the country, speaking, I have been completely out of my element. I've had to study and learn to articulate my position, to have confidence and trust in the public square. I've gone from chuck wagon mom and grandmother to a woman rancher, activist speaking on the national stage, pretty much overnight after the death of my husband. I've had to learn how to ranch, ride horse, fix fence, drive and operate farm equipment, and 100 other little things that have to do with ranching. Because again, I was the mom that took care of the kids and the city girl that married the cowboy. Literally, it's Miss Kitty and Matt Dillon in our house. And my little ramrod there, Tian, we homeschooled our last one. And so she spent almost every day with her dad learning all she needed to know to help teach me. She's the greatest boss any girl could have. And she's tough. But she's helped me to graduate from the grandkid horse to now I can ride my husband's horse. And now I know why he was riding that horse, because it's a really good horse. I love ranching, and I didn't even know I was going to love it so much. And we can do hard things, right? And it doesn't matter how old we are, we can still do these things if we put our mind to it. I love being out on horse riding and being out in nature. I get it. I understand what he loves so much about being out there and riding with his cows. I still need a little pampering, and sometimes my kids pick up the slack there now. I remember the first time out when we were pushing our cows across about 50 miles we were headed. And that first night we were getting ready to camp, and I've been in the saddle all day, and I haven't done that ever, really. So this was my first attempts at doing all of that, and I was pretty beat. And my daughters got out my bag, got out the padding that Dad always had for me, and put the cot up, put the padding out, and made all this comfort for me out in the middle of the desert, just like he would have done. I'm grateful for the family that I have, for the kids that step up. I've had so many of you donate to our family in so many different ways. Whether it was just to send a card in the mail to say how much you loved us and how much you cared for us, to let us know that you were there, because sometimes we felt so alone. We didn't know that there were so many good people out there that loved us and was concerned for us. There were times when people sent money to help me feed those cows in that grazing lot, a 5-acre grazing lot with 100 cows in there. That's a lot of hay. That's a lot of hay. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And you guys were there for me again. For the funeral cost, for the autopsy, for the many attorneys that I've had throughout the couple of years. You guys have been there. I've had my extended family that has been right beside me the whole way, helping to help teach me the things that I needed to know, to lend me the land, to put my cows on it for those 5 months. I've had my sister-in-law step in to put my cows out on her range for winter so that I wouldn't lose my herd and our heritage and that way of life for my kids and for my grandkids. I've had many experts step up to help us in so many different fields. I've had other professionals such as editors, publishers, and personal consultants and media advisors. Our world changed overnight, and there was no way I was prepared to handle any of what we were facing, and you guys were there. You were all there. It has been hard, intimidating, frightening at times, but it has been and continues to be an amazing journey. And thank you. I'm grateful to have you. These words of a favorite hymn come to my mind. Though hard to you this journey may appear, grace shall be as your day. Gird up your loins, fresh courage take. God will never us forsake. Many have asked me over and over again, how do you keep going? And why aren't you angry? I think this hymn best describes how I feel and why I am not angry. Where can I turn for peace? Where is my solace? When other sources cease to make me whole, when with a wounded heart, anger, or malice, I draw myself apart, searching my soul. Where when my aching heart grows? Where when I languish? Where in my need to know, where can I run? Where is the quiet hand to calm my anguish? Who can understand? He, only one. He answers privately, and he reaches in my reaching. In my Gethsemane, Savior and friend, gentle the peace he finds for my beseeching. Constant he is and kind, love without end. That is where I turn for my peace. That is where I turn for my solace. That is where I've turned to turn over my anger. That is where I found peace. That's where I have found forgiveness. That's where I have found the strength to keep going each and every day. Because he is there. He is there next to me every day. I could not have done this without him. We cannot do this without him. This is his land. He gave us this. He sent those men and inspired them to write that divine document. It is his. They have never left me alone. My Heavenly Father, my Savior. They have always been there, always carried me. Through the atonement, we can learn. We can learn to forgive, and we can learn to trust. I am grateful for this opportunity to be here with you, to share just a little bit about my life with my husband. Why I have kept going, because we want justice and accountability. Because if we don't push forward, if we are just sit back and go home to our normal routine or whatever routine would come, who will pay the price next time? What other lives will be lost? I know that my Savior lives, and I know that he loves me. And I have a faith in the plan of salvation that I know that I will be with my husband again. And we will pick up where we left off, except maybe I will be a better horse rider when I see him next time. And we will ride like we wanted to ride here. We will have those memories and those times together that we didn't have here. We will have them. And I hope that he will say to me, well done. Well done, Jeanette. Isn't he cute? He never seemed to age that much. It's not, though. He finally lost all his hair, but it's under that hat. You can't tell. That Sunday that I left up there at Malheur, I didn't want to leave. I was supposed to stay. He was so excited about the upcoming week because Tuesday they were going to John Day, and they knew that there was going to be a lot of people there, and they were so excited because they had an opportunity to continue to teach about the Constitution and what they were there for, because people were resonating with their message, and they were excited about the opportunity and the possibilities of the turnaround. And then they were supposed to be in Boise that Saturday, and I was to meet him there again. I was only going home to be there for my daughter's basketball game because it was senior recognition, and he had written a letter for her to be read during senior recognition. And so, as Kathy was saying, I stopped along the way and visited with her and Bert and met them for the first time. And I got home late that night. I remember speaking to Lavoy on the phone. And then the next day at my daughter's basketball game, we received the news that he had been murdered. And all of us were there. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, and my son and my daughters. And it was such a horrific, horrific time. I should have been there with him, but I wasn't. He sent me home to make sure that I would be there for my daughter. And when I left that night, he said to me, "I love you, Jeanette. Take courage. Have faith. God is in charge." And he is. He is in charge. And as in Timothy, I hope that I can say that I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I have kept the faith. I hope that in the end, I can say those things. I wish Lavoy was here to continue this move forward. He is in spirit. I feel him close to us a lot, especially out on horse. But I know that he's busy doing other work, just as excited to do that work that he was doing the work here. I want to express again my gratitude for each one of you, because I see so many good friends in this room. Those of you I didn't know 2 years ago, and now I can call you dear friends. Thank you, Tom, for bringing me a new puppy into my life. I'm so excited to be able to train him and to take him with us on horse rides and teaching him to push cattle. I think my daughter's probably going to have to teach me how to do that. But thank you all for coming. Thank you for being my extended family. Thank you for fighting this fight with us. Thank you for your continued support. Thank you for the love that you have showed me and my children. Thank you for holding us up and supporting us all this time. We still have a battle ahead of us, and we still have much to do. But I wanted to say thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you, CaroL and Jeanette. We have felt the Spirit of the Lord. I believe we've all felt the Spirit of liberty. And we are grateful for your strength, your sacrifice, and that you've taught us to stand as well. One of the things that I really appreciated about Lavoy, as I've watched some of his YouTube videos, as I've spoken with his family, as I've gotten to know Tara. Tara is the one that introduced me to Jeanette to begin with. And when I first met Tara, she was so interested in learning about the founding of the country. She was reading all these founding documents. She was excited. It was infusing her with that desire to learn and have that spirit of liberty. And Lavoy was all about education, helping us learn how to be free, because we can't be free without knowing. And before I introduce our next speaker, I was going to share a quote from Thomas Jefferson, because our next speaker is an educator as well. He will relate well with this quote, I believe. But Thomas Jefferson said, "If a nation expects to be ignorant and free in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be." We must be educated. We must learn. And I'm grateful that we have these great examples that have spoken to us today to help us know where to go to find that knowledge. Our next speaker is Brian Hyde. Whether through the spoken or written word, Brian has become a familiar voice for the cause of liberty. His background includes more than 30 years as a radio commentator and 13 years as a regular columnist. During that time, he has sought to raise the level of discussion from bumper sticker slogans to serious discourse of the principles at stake. Brian has also worked as a professional public speaker, educator, and voiceover artist. He is a Salt Lake City native, and he and his wife are the parents of 6 children. And in fact, Brian hosted Lavoy on his show, and that radio broadcast has become a great source to get insight into who Lavoy was. So with that, let's invite Brian up here.
Thank you. Doesn't it make a difference being able to hear CaroL and Jeanette talk about their experiences? I mean, look, if everything we knew about the Bundy family and everything we knew about Lavoy Finicum was what we had been told by the media, how complete would that picture be? It would be a one-dimensional cartoon, wouldn't it?
And it would be wrong.
And it would be wrong. It would be dead wrong. So look at the difference. Look what happens when you are able to go to the source and hear from the source how things have happened. Now, I suspect most of you are here because at some level you've been following this story for some time, and I hope I'm safe in that assumption. But even so, with what you already knew, you still made the time to come here tonight, to go to the source, to hear these women speak, to relate their experience. And if there's one thing that I learned from my association with Ryan Bundy, some of you may not know this, but Ryan and I became friends about 13 years ago when I moved to Cedar City. And he and I were part of a little group called Sons of Liberty. A guy by the name of Stephen Pratt encouraged us to get together on a regular basis and to teach one another the principles and practices of liberty. And we would meet every other Saturday morning, early in the morning, in a dark warehouse in a shady part of town. Well, it felt like that. I mean, it was just, there was something that kind of felt clandestine about how we would meet in the dark of the morning. But every single meeting began and ended with prayer. And invariably in that prayer, at the beginning or the end, whoever was offering that prayer asked God, please help us make a difference. And over the course of a couple of years, it was astonishing, the sense of purpose that we could just feel starting to distill on us. Now, I want you to understand, we were not out there to change the world. We were not going to, overthrow the world and replace it with the kingdom of God. We just wanted to be a positive influence in our communities, in our families, wherever we stood. This is the essence of leadership. It's using your influence wisely wherever you are right this moment. And that's what we asked for. And it was so amazing to watch opportunities come before us where we had individuals who became city council members. We had one become a county commissioner. Most of the opportunities were not political in nature. They were just simply opportunities to serve. But one of the opportunities that this led to was 4 years ago. We stood together as a group with Ammon and Ryan Bundy in a quiet field just south of the Bundy Ranch House prior to a very fateful day that most of you have probably heard about. What was amazing was we were part of a prayer that was offered on behalf of all of those who were standing for liberty that day. And I will tell you without shame, I came to know that day at a most personal level that the fight for liberty is God's fight. And I know that because we went to the source. God Almighty is the source of our liberty. And I watched as the Bundys courageously humbled themselves and sought for divine help. You've heard the term divine providence, right? It speaks to a greater plan. It speaks to a divine plan. And part of the divine plan that God has for his children is that liberty is one of the greatest gifts he has given us. And I suspect that most of you are here today because at some level you feel like you need to make a difference too. And so I'm just going to offer to you the same kind of advice that others have offered here. If you want to understand the principles and practices of liberty, nothing will beat going to the source, reading original sources, what the founders said in their own words, not what some textbook is interpreting or what some, modern interpretation of what they said is being, purported as this is what they really meant, but in their own words. They were prolific writers. Not only will you understand better what liberty is, but you'll understand better why it matters. And then, at a very individual level, I would encourage you, get on your knees and go to the source of your liberty and ask how you can become an instrument in helping to preserve liberty and perpetuate it for those generations that are going to follow. I say this with confidence only because I've seen it happen in my own life. Lavoy Finicum was an individual who had great moral clarity. Every time he came on the radio with me, we began with the word of prayer. If it's important enough that you were willing to put your life on the line or your fortune or your sacred honor, it's important enough to go to the source and seek out the direction for how you best can do it. And it's going to be different from person to person. I can't tell you what the role is that you're going to play. That would defeat the purpose of you being a leader. Find that role. Go to the source. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Our concluding speaker will be Joe Carey. He'll give some closing remarks. And I've gotten to know Joe pretty well over the last year. And, he makes me a lot cooler just, being able to say that I know him. And he is a connector. He is very well connected with people that are well liked and well known. Just a couple of things that Joe's doing right now. He's the managing partner of Little Cloud. That's a strategic social media marketing company. He spent nearly 10 years as Glenn Beck's chief of staff, and he is also a New York Times and USA Today #1 best-selling author, co-authoring Common Sense with Glenn Beck. Joe brings people together, and he's very good at bringing people together, as we can see from this gathering tonight and the many others that he's organized. So with that, let's welcome Joe Carey down to the stage.
So they put the Philadelphia lawyer at the end of the event, and that didn't escape me. I just want to say, I'll just admit I am, I think they say, all hat, no cattle. The first set of cowboy boots that I ever got was this year, and I'm wearing them today. And I have to say, I felt like, I guess women do when they get high heels for the first time. And I kept feeling I was going to fall forward. But I realized the simple truth, why there are no fat cowboys. Because then I had to take them off at night. And I got one hernia and a fractured pancreas. But eventually I had to call my daughter and say, Emily, I need to take off my boots. And then I understood the movies where, you see the girl with the sun pulling dad's boots off. But I'm grateful to be here today. But I am very new to the fight that many of you have been fighting for a very, very long time. And I don't want to make light of that fact. I'm grateful for the opportunity to have worked with CaroL and Jeanette and Kathy. But I have had a whirlwind of an education. I practiced law for 12 years in Philadelphia. And never really understood the fight that was taking place on this side of the country. I mean, open space in New York City and Philadelphia is, you're looking over over Central Park in New York City, and you're like, wow, that's open space. And then you go to Bunkerville, and you realize, wow, no, that wasn't open space. So I appreciate your patience with me, but I just wanted to share something with you. And I imagine with this group it's okay if you have a little of you guys talking about the Bible. Is that okay? Just for a little bit, but it might be a little bit awkward, but let me tell you something that I realized. I was traveling with a good friend, and he said, Joe, what do you know about the prophet Elijah? I said, okay, that's a fair question. I know he's coming back, but that's about it. And I know the Mormons believe he has come back, and the Jews think he is coming back. And that was really my knowledge of Elijah. So I started to read everything I could on this man, because in the New Testament, it tells us that Elijah is a man like unto us. He's a man like you and me. And I didn't understand that, because here's a man that raised a child from the dead. Here's a man that lived his life so he never tasted death. We're told in the Bible that a chariot came down from heaven, scooped him up in a whirlwind, and took him back to heaven. But how is a man like that? Like me? So Elijah was told, hey, I have a mission for you. You need to go to King Ahab and confront the king. And Ahab wasn't just any wicked king. The Bible tells us he was the most wicked king. When God destroyed Jericho, right? The prophet said, God commands you not to rebuild this city. What did King Ahab do? He rebuilds it. So here's a man that just didn't fear God. He mocked God. And Elijah is told, I want you to go confront this king. And in many ways, I think, as I read that story again, I thought of Cliven Bundy. I thought of Lavoy. Right? Because who's the modern day king? Right? Isn't it government? Isn't it the BLM? Isn't it the FBI, the ATF, and some of the abuses that are coming from there? But Elijah didn't complain. He didn't run. He went to the king, and he told the king, because of the wickedness you've done, God is going to punish you. And much like government today, when they're confronted with their abuse, when they're confronted with their overreach and their excess, what happens? Do they back down? Right? Do they say, oh my gosh, I didn't know we were doing that. If only you had told us sooner. Now what do they do? They try to stand up taller, become more angry, become more aggressive, tell you the land is not yours, the water is not yours, that these rights don't apply to you. That's exactly what we have told Elijah. So Ahab says, off with his head. And God tells Elijah, run. He tells him where to run to. And it's a place that everyone in this room has been to. Everyone in this room, I don't know, but I know you've been there. Because the place that God told Elijah to go to was a tiny, tiny remote place called Cherith. No one was, it's like Bunkerville. No one was there, just the Bundys. And it's so remote and so barren that God commands the ravens to feed Elijah. And Elijah is told there's going to be a stream that you can drink from. There was no family. There was no friends. There was no one. And if you're in this room, and supporters of the Bundys and the Finicums, you know what it's like when you go to a neighbor or a relative or a family member and say what? They're good people. What's the reaction? Right? That's your bit of charity, which is, this is common sense to me. I sat in the trial next to Brian Hyde, who was covering this event every day. And I walked in, not a skeptic, but not a believer. I mean, here's the government telling the federal judge, there are no snipers at Bunkerville. And I'm listening and thinking, okay, he's the acting U.S. attorney for the state of Nevada. And he's telling the judge under oath, there's no snipers. I've been brought up in this as a lawyer in Philadelphia. If a U.S. attorney is saying there's no snipers, my bias is what? There's no snipers. Then, after 3 months, all of a sudden it's like, wait, we have photos. That looks like, I'm not a military guy, it looks like this, and it looks like that. And then a memo comes out, and more evidence comes out. And I'm sitting there and I struggle with this, because I'm thinking, wait a second. I've been raised to believe these institutions. And I think many times there are many people in those institutions who try to do the right thing. But as this trial unfolded, I saw more and more, let's be polite, we call it inconsistencies. Let me just finish this up because I know it was hard, and CaroL and Jeanette want to meet all of you in the foyer area. But all of us have been to church. We know what it's like to be alone for our principles and for our beliefs. We know that feeling. But some of us are called to go a step further, and that's what happened to Elijah. Because after Elijah's at Jericho, we don't know how long he was there, but the impression is he was there for years by himself. No family, no friends, being fed by the ravens. Then God tells him, you need to get up and you need to leave. And Elijah's relieved. Finally, but what does God say? It says in the enemy territory, to Zarephath. I can only imagine, you gotta be kidding me. I thought I was going to go back home. I thought my mission was done. I didn't know the family and friends. No. We were in enemy territory where they hate the Jews. And so he obeys. Just like when Lavoy thought, it's right for me to go. I don't know why I need to go, but it's where I need to make this trek. When Cliven and his son said, I don't know why, but we can't give up this fight. We're going to do whatever it takes. So Elijah goes to Zarephath. And the drought has been going on for years. There's no rain. We're told in the Bible, not only was there no rain, there was no dew in the morning. Everybody's starving. There's no water. If there's no water, there's no food. So Elijah goes and he sees a woman at a well. And God says, go to that woman and tell her to fetch you some water. That doesn't sit very well today in the current world. He told this woman, okay, God, can you fetch some water? What does the woman say? What does she say? She says, okay, I'll do it. So she's fetching the water, and then what does Elijah say? Well, since you're fetching the water, why don't you make me some bread? Oh my gosh, this guy's at a death wish. And her response is, I'm here to get a little bit of water so I can make a little bit of bread so I can share it with my son, and then we plan on dying because there's no food. We are not called, many of us are not called, as the Bundys and the Finicums have been, to go to Zarephath. But each of us is that woman at the well. And each of us have a responsibility to what? To give, to help, to sustain. That's what most of us will be called to do. It's to sustain and support the Bundys and the Finicums in their mission. I want to thank Kathy and Love and Liberty. And when they wrote the check and said, you know what, we're going to cover the cost tonight. Why? So every dollar that you spend on ticket can go to these two families and cause they believe in. So Kathy, Love and Liberty, thank you for that. Jeanette and CaroL will be out in the foyer. You're going to have the opportunity to